Welcome to Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date developments in the global financial world.
From Jersey City on the East Coast to Los Angeles on the West Coast, American shoppers picked grocery store shelves clean on products ranging from disinfectants to rice, causing retailers to race to restock their stores as a worsening coronavirus crisis stoked fears of shortages. Daily routines have been upended as businesses, including Amazon.com, urge employees to work from home, schools and universities close, and sporting events and church services are paused across the country. In response to the run on certain items, major retailers have imposed some purchase limits. Shoppers swarmed stores such as this Costco in Washington, D.C., leaving with carts full of groceries, water, and toilet paper. Retailers reported limiting the number of cold medicines, face masks, hand sanitizers, disinfectant wipes, and sanitary products per visit.
As the US President Donald Trump declared a national emergency over the fast-spreading coronavirus, much of Washington, D.C.'s tourist sites have announced they would close. In Washington, D.C., officials closed the U.S. Capitol complex to the public after a staffer for a senator from Washington state tested positive for the coronavirus. White House tours were cancelled and the Kennedy Center cancelled all performances through the end of the month, when they said they would re-evaluate the decision. As the schools and universities in the nation's capital announced closures, families headed to the zoo, only to find out it too would be closing on March 13th, disappointing some tourists while others took it in stride. The virus that emerged in central China in December has now spread to over 130 countries and territories and infected more than 138,000 people worldwide, according to the World Health Organization, and it has so far led to 46 deaths in the US.
People concerned about whether they have the coronavirus in Seattle can now drive through a testing center while remaining in their cars. Medical staff in protective gear swabs the noses of passengers in their cars as part of the testing procedure. Cohen hopes the drive-through, a mainstay of American culture, will be effective with the American public.
Priority is, to protect our staff. Our testers are really on the front lines of this epidemic, and so they are in full personal protective equipment. You can see that they're wearing gowns, gloves, face masks, and face shields, and that they are it's a carefully choreographed procedure in terms of how to put on the PPE, how to take it off, and then washing their hands frequently. The other thing that we do to make sure that our staff are at lower risk is when the cars pull up, there's really pretty minimal interaction with the patient until you get to the testing step. So it's really not until you roll down the window and then swab them, and at that point you might generate a strong cough reflex, and that's why we have the PPE. But it's a very brief encounter, and then we're changing our PPE between each encounter.
Where am I meeting you?
Let's talk about phone.
Sure.
This is an outbreak that touches every part of our hospital. We need to think about every department. And then, of course, we're thinking about how it touches all of our communities and skilled nursing facilities. And I think in Seattle, we've learned a lot of lessons the hard way in terms of where this virus can strike and what populations it might disproportionately affect. I think early on we were a little bit hamstrung by the availability of testing, and now that our virology lab has really ramped up capacity to test, I think we've been able to stay on top of the outbreak in Seattle.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. All right. Appreciate it.
Okay. Parking garage was done partly because we want good ventilation and we don't want people to congregate in waiting areas where they can actually spread infections to each other. And so we think that this was just an easy way and sort of a for Americans, I think it's an easy concept to grasp, where we just give people, appointments, they show up, and we just get them through and in and out as quickly as possible.
Shoppers rushed to supermarkets in Australia on Saturday, March 14th, after the Prime Minister announced a ban on large non-essential gatherings in order to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Prime Minister Scott Morrison on Friday, March 13th, called for an end from March 16th to all non-essential gatherings of more than 500 people, including sporting and cultural events, and urged people to reconsider overseas trips.
Prime Minister Edouard Philippe announced on Saturday France will close all non-essential stores in order to stop the rapid spread of the coronavirus in Europe. The order applies to restaurants, cafes, and movie theaters, effective at midnight. Grocery stores, pharmacies, gas stations, and public transportation will remain open to the public. There are at least 3,667 confirmed cases of coronavirus in France, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. The WHO declared Europe the epicenter of the global pandemic earlier this week. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said Friday at a news conference in Geneva, more cases are now being reported in Europe every day than were reported in China at the height of its epidemic. Italy has imposed a nationwide lockdown. Germany, the EU's largest economy, has called for the cancellation of most public events to stop the spread of the virus. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has warned that the coronavirus presents a more extraordinary situation than the banking crisis that roiled the Eurozone currency union a decade ago. Though the virus is having a massive impact on daily life and economic activity in Europe, the European Central Bank surprised markets by declining to cut interest rates this week. The central bank did announce measures to support bank lending and expanded its asset purchase program by 120 billion euros. Both the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England have cut rates in response to the global pandemic.
Business Review, your daily source for the most critical financial stories. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.